Well, welcome back, class. This is part 2 of week 3. And in part 1, we were just talking about the studio structure and how they really began to mass produce movies, very much like a factory. So with hundreds of movies coming out by multiple studios on both sides of America, remember New York is still producing movies, and now Hollywood out in Los Angeles is producing movies. Where are you going to watch these movies? Now, I think in week 1 we talked about how the theaters really kind of developed in the late 1800s as Nickelodeons, where you could sit there and watch and spin the little, dial and have the film flip by your mind there, or your eyes, I should say, and then gradually developed into small theaters where people could go in and watch these movies. But by the teens here, you have an industry with a lot of movies, some of them epic, some of them comedy, some of them romance, all different types of genres. And you start to see the development of theaters, not just as little places that people slip into and watch a movie, but really as these big spectacles. You can see on page 170 a picture of the Roxy Theater there in New York City. It was known as the Cathedral of Cinema, the Cathedral of Motion Pictures. Now, obviously, this was taken in 1927, but in the teens, you start to see theaters develop with hundreds of seats, and then gradually start to see this in big cities, theaters that can seat up to 3,000 people to watch some of these movies. And as these big cathedrals, these big grand theaters start to develop, you see not just the lower income person who wants to, bring his hard-earned dime and enjoy some sort of base humor. You start to see the middle class come to the cinema, and then you start to see even some of the upper class come to the cinema as it becomes accepted in the culture as an art form. Now, I don't think anybody was going there going, no, I like the way the camera was framed on this. It was very much like Van Gogh would do. No, don't misconstrue what I'm saying here in regards to an art form. What it is developing is an acceptable medium that people from all different walks of life can go and enjoy this visual spectacle and enjoy it in something very comfortable, with comfortable seats, very beautiful surroundings. I mean, if you've ever had a chance to go to Los Angeles and go to the El Capitan Theater that's been restored by Disney, or even the Pantages Theater, where a lot of plays are put on, I mean, they're just absolutely beautiful. They're grand. They're huge. And it's out of this era that they develop because they figure, well, people want to see these movies. If we put them into theaters that people want to go and see and are very much a spectacle in themselves, well, you're gonna have huge audiences, and they were right. People came left and right to go and watch movies in these big theaters. So it's interesting that as the structure developed for making movies, so did the theaters, and so did the exhibition as well. There started to become, well, that's exhibition, the theaters. Then there became a distribution in getting these films out to multiple places. Now, some people were smart. Guys like Zucker, that eventually became Paramount Pictures, he started block booking, meaning he would put an A-list movie, with a big name like Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton, whoever he had as an A-list actor at the time, and a much anticipated movie, and then he would link that with a couple of other movies that were B movies, so weren't really going to be that popular, didn't have popular actors in it, but nonetheless you had to buy the whole package to show at your theater. And this became a practice that was used for many years to sell multiple films to theaters. And so it's kind of an interesting practice. Now, with that, you have some independents in Hollywood who want to be able to get their movies seen, but the big guys like Zucker are block booking, and it's hard to get their movies distributed. So some of them start to break off from other people and start to form their own companies. One of those guys is Mack Sennett. I think I mentioned him earlier, and he created the Keystone Studios, where he produced a lot of these 1 to 2 reel films, and basically short films, short subjects. A lot of them, the Keystone Coppers came out of the Keystone Studios. Let's connect those two there. And he also hired a young actor, a British immigrant from a poor background, for $150 a week to be in his movies in 1913. And his name was Charlie Chaplin. Now, we all know that name. He's one of the most famous actors in Hollywood history. But at that time in 1913, he was an unknown, and he was given $150 a week. Now, if you think about that, that's $600 a month, and I'm sure in 1913 that was a decent salary. It wasn't like he was getting rich, but it wasn't a totally poor salary. Well, he did a great job. People liked his movies. And so in 1915, just 2 years later, another studio lures him away with a fantastic package of $1,250 a week. And that's fascinating. I mean, that's $5,000 a month. That's actually more than I make now, and that was 1915. What's going on here? But think about that. What a fantastic story! In 2 years, you go from $150 a week to $1,250 a week, and he starts to develop with this new studio, S&A Studios, I think is how you say it. He starts to develop with them, really kind of his trademark character, the tramp character. And it becomes so popular. People connect with it. They're entertained by him. They find him very humorous. So much so that the following year, just in 1916, 1 year later, he is offered $10,000 a week. Guys, that's $40,000 a month in 1916. It's unbelievable. He even got a $150,000 signing bonus. And it was to make 12 films with the Mutual Film Company, I believe. What an amazing story. In a matter of 3 years, he goes from making $150 a week to, what? $10,000 a week. That's unbelievable. But you have to realize that's how much money these studios were making. So many people were going to the cinema. Here we are, 1915. Remember, just 2 weeks ago, we were looking at Edison Films, 1895, that were just short, 30-second, 1-minute clips of a slice of life. And in 20 years, we have what would be considered the Hollywood structure, where you have the big studios making films that a lot of people go and pay to see, and they go to theaters that are big spectacles with balconies and cushioned seats, and maybe some of them even air conditioning, and fantastic pipe organs, because at this time there was no sound, and so the music played along with it. And then you have developing actors and actresses that are names that people love to go see. Did you see the new Charlie Chaplin movie? Did you see the new Buster Keaton movie? Did you see the Fatty Arbuckle movie? Even Mary Pickford as a female actress starts to become very wanted. People wanted to see these movies. And so in a matter of 20 years, what we even know to a certain extent now existed. And I find that fascinating. So here we go. Charlie Chaplin. By the mid-teens there, 1915, 1916, he becomes a star. And in 1919, he, along with, as I mentioned, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and D.W. Griffith, they formed their own studio called United Artists. And some of you might have heard of that. It still exists today. It's not at all what it used to be, but up until sound in the late 20s there, they would go and produce a lot of movies together. And the whole idea was, hey, we're actors, and we're making a lot of money, and people are coming to see the movies because of us. And all these studios are making more money off of us than we're actually making. Let's go make our own studio. So that's actually pretty interesting how that came about. All right, we'll go ahead and stop here. We'll pick up in part 3 and set up modern times. All right, thanks.